All right. Well, we're sitting here with you, with
Yes,
Ray,
with Ray.
from the United Way, and tell us a little bit about what's going on. You have this Kickoff Cook Off, and bunch of restaurants that are participating here in Syracuse. So tell
So
us about it.
I should probably start with the where this came from. So Kickoff Cook Off, as people knew it, was an event that usually was happening at NBT Bank Stadium.
Okay.
There would be, sorry, cough button. There would be 20, 25 different teams that were there. So it was, companies would have a team. They would make something, some kind of dish. So Anheuser-Busch would have a chili made with their beer, and a team from Carrier would make, a special thing, and everybody would dress up in these costumes. So it was sort of a theme competition, and then all of the teams were also competing. The cook-off capacity was they would make the dish, and they would compete because thousands of people would come into the stadium, pay $5, and go around and sample all of the items. Great idea. Used to get, and even as to last year, would get maybe close to 2,000 people over a 3-hour span. It was a pretty big event,
Yeah.
but we started the year and said, that's probably not going to happen. For some, for some reasons, we're probably not going to be having a few thousand people sample foods made by people, in different kitchens. And,
Yeah.
the health department was involved. It was always checked off. But I'm
That's
like,
cool.
I just don't see this on the horizon.
Yeah. Was there a possibility of doing just a very distanced version of it, or was there no possibility at all?
So we started throwing out ideas, and there was, maybe we can have people stop at the locations in one spot, or maybe, so we started brainstorming. Laura Surway from Lacey's Tapas is a huge supporter of United Way. My office, I sit across from the Laura Surway conference room. I mean, she was there for, she's helped start up Women United, which is an affinity group, great thing to know about. And we started going back and forth about what could work, because I guess the kernel of the idea is that I thought, okay, it's food focused.
Yeah.
At its heart, it's really the kickoff campaign. It's the kickoff cook-off because it's kicking off the campaign season. So United Way really works with, primarily with workplace donation campaigns, with people going through and saying, okay, we're going to get together. We'll talk about it's, the start of another campaign season. You could, make a donation for the first time. You could keep your donation where it is. You could do the Step Up campaign and donate more. If you've never heard about United Way, we'll explain more about what's going on. Again, probably not going to have as many in-office gatherings of people getting together for this. So we're losing that aspect.
Yeah.
So it was the idea of, can we do something that's food-focused, that reaches into the local community, and at its core, for me as a marketer, it's how can I do something that's going to generate interest, awareness, and some action in terms of thinking through when you get that form in front of you or that email from HR that says it's United Way campaign season. You're not just going, well, I don't know. I haven't heard of United Way. I'm not familiar with this. We need awareness at this moment of not only the name, but of what United Way is doing in the community.
Right.
And it wasn't a big stretch to say, as I was living at home through COVID, probably as you were, and I've, heard you on other podcasts talking about, food was a big focus for you. And knowing that restaurants were going through just awful times.
Yeah.
There were some that were figuring it out because maybe they already had the model. They already knew how to do takeout. But a lot of people, between wait staff and cooks and cleaning staff and everybody else involved, it's like, this is just a struggle.
Yeah.
And we're trying to make our businesses stay alive through all of this. We don't know when it's coming to an end. So I thought through my own, personal side of, we were trying to support as many local places as we could. We always did support local, but we were like, at least once a week, if not more, we have to order from somebody. We have to make sure that we're going out there and doing something. And I'm like, we could do something food related, obviously. They're restaurants. We could do something that would involve the companies. They had budgets for doing these pieces of, underwriting and sponsoring, and they're not going to go anywhere with that. If we come up with something that's really fun and interesting and they enjoy this, they might want to put a sponsorship to it. So going out to the restaurant community and starting to ask ideas, asking Laura Surway and saying, okay, what do you think? How would this work? And we first started off with the idea of let's do a kickoff cook-off where we'll team up the companies and they'll work with a restaurant and they'll go into the restaurant and they'll make the dish together. And I'm like, it was a great idea.
Yeah.
From where we were when this started, like, we can't put chefs, more than 2 or 3 in the line right now. We're not going to be able to get, the president of the company to come in and whip up a dish and start selling it. So that's probably not going to happen. So we scaled it back. We went a different direction. And it really just came, it was, how do we support the restaurants? Well, we just get customers. How do we generate awareness for United Way? Do the same sort of thing as we did with the Kickoff Cook Off traditionally, and put an item on the menu that would say, this is our entry. And then we said, all right, take away the competition. Let's just make this about just go support the restaurant.
That's cool.
The thing is, when we reached out to restaurants and I started making these calls, and I was coming from a sales side of things where I didn't have to sell, but I worked with salespeople.
Yeah.
And to know that, in the past it was, so somebody calls from a media company and they say, oh, well, I don't know. We called up and we said, here's the idea. And everybody said, it's supporting United Way. Yes. Okay. We're in. And I'm like, that's it? Yes. What do you need? I said, we would need, put something on the menu, or you could make a day and say, today a portion of our proceeds will go to United Way, or you could, tell me what you want. And everyone across the board was like, sure, we'll do it. We can figure it out if we're open and we can make this work. So in some cases it was reaching out to restaurants that, I wanted to have, some of my favorites that were locally owned, and they're just not in a position yet.
Right.
I could say I think probably the first one I thought of was Darwin's.
Oh, yeah.
I love Darwin's. I've always loved it since we came back to town. I found the place, and I'm like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
But they're not in a position yet to open.
Right.
And I'm like, but you know what? Daryl from Darwin's, he was like, we are going to be supporting you, whatever we do in the future. We'll figure it out. I'm like, I just want to, we need to bring the support to you.
Yeah.
And that all ties together with this is what United Way does. We are not the people that are running programs, but when you donate to United Way, we're supporting the effort for all of these programs across the community. It's a community focus that you take the money in and you put it back out, but working together with this, actually being able to take these dollars in larger amounts, it works for Central New York.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's really cool. There's some great restaurants. A Pizza, Dinosaur, the Fish Fryer, Glazed, Lacey's, Kitty Hoynes, Grimaldi's, Limp Lizard, Rise and Shine Original. I'm listing all of them, but there are really some amazing restaurants. I love that not all of them are right in downtown. That you got like Vince's up in North Syracuse and Limp Lizard. Yeah. Grimaldi's. Yeah, it's some pretty cool spots, especially popular ones that people are going to go to anyways.
Well, and that's really at the core of it, and we've heard from other people, from other restaurants that said, we'd like to be involved, but weren't we approached?
Yeah.
I would love to have everybody involved. The coordination really started with, how do we make this, again, it's about awareness, and how do we do this without spending an exceptional amount on media?
Yeah.
We had great media sponsors that have gone above and beyond.
Yeah.
CNY Central, Syracuse.com, Cumulus,
right?
so
Yeah.
95X and 93Q. They've been fantastic. And in many cases, it's been, a ridiculous amount of in-kind that's been given to help support this effort.
Yeah.
It was, if you look across the board on everybody that's listed here, primarily, they were the top social media feeds in Syracuse. So they had an Instagram following, or they had a Facebook following. They could support their own effort.
Yeah.
We didn't have to stand it up and say, okay, 20 restaurants, and we're going to put you all into a commercial, and you're going to, we're going to try and because the audience doesn't understand that. We can't put all of these things out there at the same time and be like, go to all 20 in 20-second, in a 30-second commercial. How do you explain that? So they individually could have the efforts. So we produced the landing page in-house. We produced all the print work, all of the other pieces.
That's cool.
And took the logos. Everyone said, here you go, ready to go. It's all ready. put it all together and then gave each of the restaurants elements for them to be able to incorporate into their social media. So Instagram stories and Facebook pieces and all the elements, and said, use it how you want to. The second step on it was, when everyone said, because we didn't go out initially asking for the restaurants to make a donation for the items. We just said, can you put something on to help us, make this effort work? Yeah. But the restaurants were the ones that came back and said, no, we'll give you 50 cents. We'll give you $1. We'll give you this. We'll see how it's, how it sells, and we'll go, most of them said, I'm not going to commit to, I don't want to give you just $1 on this, because I'm going to add more onto it if I don't feel like it was enough.
Yeah. That's cool.
The kind of support that we have in our community, I mean, that to see that, to know that businesses in a lot of cases are facing challenges like no one's ever seen before. COVID has been hitting them in a way that they can't expect. They don't know what's coming next, but that they say, I don't care. We know what this is supporting. We're going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of restaurants that are jumping in to support one another like crazy, especially in downtown. Downtown's kind of always been that way. I shouldn't say always been that way. There's I've heard plenty of stories over the years of one restaurant owner supporting another, giving them something that they need, ingredient, sharing, whatever the case is.
Yep.
But especially now, I mean, I was at Three Lives one night. Before they'd even done their soft opening, they were just having like a couple people down, some like late nights to kind of, try one or two items on the menu and yada, yada, yada. And I was down there one night hanging out, and Adam from across the street at Funkin' Waffles walked over. He was in the kitchen cooking. They got a break, and he ran over just to say hi and hang out with them. And he's sitting there eating the food, telling them how great it was. I mean, granted, it's Funkin' Waffles and Three Lives, and so it's not like another waffle restaurant opened up across the street, but it's still a competitor. It's still somebody who's going to be pulling customers. And he was over there hanging out with them, laughing, supporting them. I mean, there was really some great support in our community, even amongst the people that, quote unquote, compete with one another.
Yeah, I mean, it's Syracuse. And the reach out to the restaurants was, we had board members that would say, I have a connection. I can call Original Grain. I can, I'm with Exo Taco, I can do this piece, I can fix this, I can put that in. And then the communication between the restaurants, I mean, again, it's Syracuse. Yeah. It's Central New York. Once you start to kind of connect with one, then you figure out another. And if you're out there, I'm, spending too much of my budget on going to lunch at pretty much every local place I can find. And it's like, this is what happens, though, is you start to run into the same people. So you figure out pretty quick, like Hanover Square, it's like, you go and you look at like the list here, and it's like Sweet Praxis. Absolutely. Jen and Natalie were in. Yeah. And they were one of the first ones that said yes.
That's cool.
Go over to Water Street Bagel. Like Magdellis, yes. Yeah. Absolutely. What do you need? How do we make this work? And you just keep going around the corners, and you're like, they're Fish Fryer. And I said, Amanda Hughes over at Ice Cream Stand. And they're like, we love Amanda. Like everybody is all connected to each other. That's cool. And they all work together, and they all know, this is, okay, they're doing that, great, let's do it. And it was like the dominoes just kind of went as we started to get one. Then they were like, oh, well, if they're doing that, and what are they doing? And you're like, they're going to do this. Yes, we're in. So it's the beauty of the community that's there for downtown, for Syracuse, and then out of downtown, to look at like Vince's and to look at Limp Lizard and places and Toss and Fire, who all have connections between each other as well. Right. And like they have connections to the restaurants downtown. And you've had enough people through that that the restaurant world is like, somebody's going to go from one place to the other. Like they're not probably going from being like a chef to a computer programmer. Like they're going from a chef to being a chef, like somewhere else. And it's a small community of people. Yeah.
So you're marketing director for the United Way in Central New York. Is that correct?
I am the chief marketing officer.
Chief marketing officer. There we go. Nice.
It's a title.
Yeah, it is a title.
Yes.
When did you get into marketing?
Let's see. If we're going all the way back, I don't like saying things in terms of 20 years, but I'm like, yeah. Like my wife will tell me, I'll be like, oh, that was a couple years ago. She's like, no, it was 10 years ago. And I'm like, all right. Yeah. I guess it was 10 years ago.
That's funny.
I did. So let's say I came out of Syracuse University with an English degree and thought I was going to be a teacher for a long period of time through college, and got to the last year and said, yeah, I can't do this. I had a lot of teachers in my family, a lot of teachers I admired. I went out and I said, I just don't think I can be in the classroom doing the lessons the way this are. And people said, okay, you've got the experience with it. You don't need to go into teaching, but congratulations, you now have an English degree. So I went from there to, I thought, all right, I think I'd go into advertising. I think I like copywriting. I think I'll check that out. And I did a part-time stint for the first 2 weeks. It was a small agency in town. It was called JT Spock and Associates. And they said, all right, you're going to be a copywriter. You're going to be a public relations person. You're going to be a production manager. And we'll try it out and see how it goes. And 2 weeks later, they said, okay, you're on full-time as copywriter, production manager, and public relations person. So it was, and that was down on Salina Street. It's now an apartment building right next to where the salt market is.
Okay.
It was the Empire building, I think.
Okay.
And there was a little deli down there called Jack's, called Mini Jack's, which from a food perspective, it was like the best pastrami.
Really?
Yeah. It was fantastic.
Wow.
And he used to say, oh, I get my pastrami in from New York. Again, he was probably lying to me, but like I could eat pastrami sandwich because I was just out of college, and every day was like, hot pastrami. Sure. Why not? So from there over to another small agency named Crawford Advertising that was over towards Franklin Square.
Okay.
And I said, okay, I really enjoy copywriting, but I really enjoy radio, because in copywriting and writing, so I say copywriting, people are like, does that mean you put a,
right.
copyright on something? No, it's just copy is the words. And so I would write radio scripts, and I was like, I really like writing radio. So there was a station group in town, now known as iHeartMedia, was Clear Channel.
Yeah. Was
7 radio stations. There were, 2. So I came in as a creative director. I had another creative director that I was working with, 3 full-time producers. It was a pretty large operation that was producing commercials for, this was, again, 1998, 2000.
Okay.
So radio was still like it was a go-to for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think brought me into, and why I've got so much focus on local, is when you work with 7 radio stations and you work with this many different kinds of stations and this many different kinds of clients, it gave me, I grew up in Liverpool. I went to Syracuse. But when you start to understand local businesses and what people are trying to do, and you understand how much money they're putting into and how much hope they have in this campaign, you start to take the idea of local business more seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
You start to say, okay, I'm playing with someone's savings. This can't just be it's going to have to be, it can't just be done for the glory of, we made an award-winning campaign. It can't just be, it's just a boring campaign. Like,
right.
You have to do something to hope that you're going to drive some results for these businesses, because you're going to run into them. They live here. This isn't like you're not just getting an order over the internet and just filling it in. Like, you're going to see this person and you're going to be like, I hope this was successful. And it's like, when you put that kind of pressure on, the copy, the medium, and all these pieces, you start to think through, like, what am I doing here?
God, that's pretty interesting to hear you say that, because as someone, we do part of the business is we do the marketing for 6 restaurants in town. And there's, in that time, I've done radio spots for 2 of them. And one of them I think I did a pretty good job with. The other one, they always seem to suck. But I've never ran into a salesperson at a radio station in town that's ever, like, come anywhere close to feeling or saying anything like what you just said about, I have to realize this is the restaurant owner's savings, or what the business owner's savings, or whatever the case is.
I wasn't, because I wasn't in sales,
Yeah.
because I was coming at it from a creative standpoint.
Gotcha.
I could say,
Yeah.
To their effect, it was,
Right.
They're trying to make a sale because they're
Yeah.
also trying to make a living.
Right, for sure.
I was the non-salary employee, the one when, you go to a car dealership, they're like, we don't have salaries. We don't care if you buy a car. Of course you care.
Right.
But you also know that, I'm going to get paid until someone says, well, this job doesn't make sense, and they get rid of you. But
Right.
I'm going to get paid up until this point because I'm doing something. And if I can do more for someone, it'll help.
Yeah.
And they'll keep coming back, show more value. So there's something to be said for the power of advertising to help grow a business if it works. So at that point, it was definitely radio could be used. For restaurants, it was a challenge
Yeah.
because you're trying to sell a largely visual medium,
Yeah.
and people would always go to the thing of, let's just make the steak sizzle,
Right.
And if we use the Sonic brand, then we're going to make somebody,
Mhm.
yes. Later on in life, I went to work for Katz Media,
Mhm.
which was a national radio company. They repped 95% of the stations around the country.
Mhm.
And we worked with, with Starbucks and Target and Home Depot and Burger King. And, we did these Sonic brand studies and found like, if you had the gong of the Taco Bell bell going off, that we ran studies and the people said, well, without even saying this is Taco Bell, we play the sound and we're like, what does that make you feel? And people said, hungry. I'm hungry. I want a taco. And I'm like, the power that we have with this medium because it does radio and audio does this great thing about connecting with people's brains in subconscious ways, and they can actually kind of, so, as I'm talking through the microphone right now, and like there's this whole idea of you hear it and it triggers you in a way that your eyes won't let you figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll start to think through and think these things. And I think it can be done wonderfully, or it can be done quickly and cheap and kind of do what you expect.
Yeah.
Most people are not pushing for, bigger results and for doing something that's going to be unusual because it's you have to take a risk on it.
Right. Yeah, listen, last year we did, which I don't know what we're going to do this year. We can't really figure it out. The new Eat Local card comes out October 1st is when we're going to launch it. And, last year we did a launch party at IBU, which unfortunately is about to no longer exist. But we had like 4 food trucks and it was great. I mean, we had maybe like 140 people there, and they all got dinner. Like you paid $40, you got the card for that year, but then you got dinner from any of the food trucks and 2 pints. And we had a band and we had Helping Hounds there because that was the charity last year it was a great time, and we can't, do that this year.
Right.
I was trying to think if like, could I get a huge field and do like a brewery tour and then just keep every booth like 30 feet apart and try and do some massive.
So you want to do like a 5K food tour?
Yeah, right.
You could just say, by the time this is done, you've actually completed like a half marathon.
That actually sounds like honestly, when you said that, the first thing that popped in my head, that was a joke, but I took it.
There's always a part joke and sort of a part idea. This is,
right.
when you're like, oh, why don't we have, the company president go and make a dish? Like if you don't open it up and think, why not?
Right.
If you don't actually consider some options, so that might be, and I think that's the whole thing. If it connects with people and they can picture it, it's the 5K food tour.
Right.
Why not?
I was thinking, I think they did somewhere around our area. It's like the country's longest yard sale, right? It goes from like.
Is this the one down by Montezuma?
Maybe. No. It goes for like 20 or 30 miles or something like that.
Okay.
It's going to drive me crazy. Anyways, I could do something like that, but for a brewery tour, like stretch it out over like a mile long, and just that might be. That's not going to happen this year, but that's not a terrible idea. It's not a terrible idea.
I think that the loop around the lake, maybe you can.
That'd be really cool.
Start working on trying to get the booth set up.
They definitely wouldn't let me do that this year, but. Anyways, last year when we were doing the launch party, we were about 2 weeks away from it, and the ticket sales weren't great. They weren't like we had sold like 20 tickets. And Syracuse is unfortunately not for everything, but for a lot of the events, it is kind of like, and maybe not just Syracuse. I'm sure it happens all over the place. It's like a last minute city. It's like sounds like a great event. We'll make our decision on if we're going to buy a ticket like the day before or the day of. In our case, it was like the day before, and most of it was the day of. Like we were selling tickets like crazy on that day of the event. But the thing that I turned to was radio. It was like all right, we're running Facebook ads for the event. People were mentioning it like crazy. I was on my Instagram stories driving the followers crazy, like 5 times a day doing a story about go buy your ticket, swipe up to buy your ticket. Yeah. And then we went to the radio, and we definitely got some good results from that.
It's a broadcast medium, which takes a different kind of thought.
Yeah.
That's so a large part of what we're doing here, I mean, has been primarily social media. But connecting to the audience. So if you're in social media, you know that you have someone that's following you. Obviously, you can buy ads, you can boost posts, and do different things to try and reach out to other audiences. But you know that you've cultivated an audience who's here for what reason?
Right.
If it's eat local, you know why they're there.
Yeah.
They like food. They like local. They want to see pictures. And you don't do things that go too far off of your brand.
Right.
I mean, we have to be careful with, United Way has so many different pieces, so many different aspects for why someone is following us. Like, we want to make sure this still fits with the audience, and it says, they don't want to just see food pictures.
Right.
They want to know more about how do I support the community? How is this working for the causes? How is this helping the nonprofits in town?
Yeah.
And so it's, again, it's the dance of that, the radio thing of being able to rely on someone like Ted and Amy. They were the hosts for Kickoff Cook Off every year.
Okay.
So to be able to go back to them, and it was an automatic thought, was Ted and Amy they're the presents. They were the ones that hosted it. They gave out the awards. They emceed the event. They did all the pieces. And they have this following in the community. I've met Ted and Amy, but when I saw them last year, so I've only been with United Way for about less than a year.
Okay.
And I saw them last year, and I said, just so you know, I'm like, when I was working in New York at a national level in radio, and I would write up spec scripts for some people, and I'd write some copy in there, and I wrote up this one example, and I said, whatever the product was, and the idea was they were going to work into festivals or do something, and I wrote someone else in there, and it was whatever the example was, and I said it was in Syracuse.
Yeah.
And one of the presidents from one of the divisions came up to me and said, if you were going to do something in Syracuse, wouldn't you use Ted and Amy? I went, I'm sorry. How familiar are you with Syracuse, and why?
Right.
Like, most of the people in New York were like, oh, if you're going home to Syracuse, do you need your passport to get back in? And I'm like, yeah. So it's, they have a presence. They have because they're professionals.
Right.
And this is like the same experience that, when I moved to New York and I told my wife I'm bringing the radio, and she hadn't listened to radio because she had been in New York. We were long distance for 7 years.
Okay.
She was there. She had not had it. Now she's like, I'm great. The old man has moved in. He's brought a shower radio with him. But she started listening to, in New York, it was Elvis Duran.
Yeah.
Because he broadcasted out of New York. So it was like an experience for her, was like, he's talking about the things in New York. And like, yes, I was like down around, downtown, and saw some of the people from Elvis Duran. Like, they live there, they work there. This was their experience. And she felt like it was connecting with her again. Yeah. She hadn't listened since like Ted and Amy in Syracuse, but now she was in it and was connected to it. And I think that's what the value is that if you have a medium like radio, where you have local hosts, where you have the Ted and Amy, or you have the people on 95X, or the people over at Galaxy, or the people that, the support we get with like Dave Allen over at WSYR, like they live here. Dave Allen is the host on the radio show at WSYR in the morning. He's the ECC. He runs the campaign for Clear Channel, for iHeartMedia. Yeah. Like, he has a commitment to, I want this to work. Yeah. And you got to know, even though it's a national brand, and I mean, this is the whole thing. I don't want to take down national brands because you still have local people here doing it. So we didn't have like franchises in here, but there are still local people working there, owning them. Yeah. Chick-fil-A, you were talking about earlier, I mean, he's a local owner.
Right, exactly.
And there are Syracuse people working there. So we don't want to just say, only go local.
Right.
Even though you eat local, I'm probably like, you're like, get up and leave now.
No, but I had this conversation with Chris Fowler way back when he was running for mayor.
Right.
And I did this series called Dinner with the Candidates. And so back when the race was going on, I had dinner with Chris, with Marty Masterpole, with Ben Walsh, and with Andrew Maxwell for like the 2-week time that he was in it. And it was, and so I would go to dinner with him. And then this is before the podcast. We had a blog at the time that we would do like I think a monthly issue, and we had like 5 writers, and it didn't work. And so I would go to dinner with them, and the first one I did was with Chris. So I'd go to dinner with him, talk to him about everything, and then the thought was I would write a blog about it, about that candidate. And absolutely loved it. That was like the only time it was like the first thing that really got me interested in local politics. The thing that really got me interested in local politics was Juanita's campaign, the Westcott Massacre event. That is my favorite political story ever. I mean, I love that story. Not because it was just amazing to be able to see that like one thing like that could completely sway the results of an election.
Mm-hmm.
Is fascinating to me, especially here in Syracuse, New York. Just absolutely fascinating to me. That was the thing that really.
I mean, we don't. Yes.
Who knows if Juanita had it in the bag, but it felt like she did when that happened. From my memory is that like it was definitely Juanita and Ben. I forget the Laura who was the Republican candidate, and then you had Howie that's run for every office anywhere, and so it was really the four of them at that point. And when like Syracuse.com was doing their like four-way talks, it was really just Ben and Juanita. I mean, that's really all it was. I made the joke that it seemed that like Laura and Howie, it was like the parents who were like in the living room while their kids were arguing, not getting involved in the conversation. That's really kind of what it felt like.
Do you think are we the norm? I mean, I think when I start talking like local politics and about, what the board, what's happening over here and how this is working, and I'm like, I don't know if the rest of Syracuse is kind of as invested in this or knows what's happening.
Right.
Which I wish more people did.
Yeah.
And understood like, this is how government works.
Right.
This is your common counselor. This is what, they represent your district. Like that kind of level of politics, I'm not sure. I mean, I have to think back and I'm like, did I learn this in government? Like,
right.
Did I understand like this is how government works?
Yeah. Listen, I just realized the importance of the common counselor over the last 2 years. I'm 34, so I definitely did not learn it in politics and government in high school, and I didn't care enough to really look into it in the other adult years before 32. But being like connected more into like a local community, doing what I do in Syracuse, and meeting different people. It's like, okay, so you're we have chickens now in our backyard and we live in the city and that's illegal. But before I got the chickens, I was like, okay, well, it's illegal. I need to go talk to someone in government who's going to allow me to do this. And I quickly realized the only person I can really go to is going to be my common counselor for my district. He never returned my phone calls. Oddly enough, it was during COVID, and I was calling and saying, I want chickens. Please call me.
Maybe there were some other things.
Maybe. But I've realized that, common council is really one of the most important positions in local government.
Yep.
Yeah. But I don't think the community at large is really as interested in the local. I've told that story about like the Westcott Massacre plenty of times. I referenced that, and you're really one of the first people in maybe the last year that's like looked like, oh yeah, I know what that is.
I spend too much time on Twitter as well.
Yeah,
so I mean, I don't tweet, but I will. It's like I'm a Twitter lurker. But that's, you see the people that are kind of doing the stories, and we are not as, through consolidation, through a lot of things, we are not as filled with media as we previously were. Obviously, my time with a national media company ended because my division was just gone.
Yeah.
That happens.
Right. For sure.
But a lot of that has gone to you with a podcast, to someone else with a Twitter feed, with someone else that's, it's the gaps are being filled in and the stories are being told. You have to do more work to find them now.
Yeah.
And once you find them and you're like, okay, I've got a reliable source. I've got someone who's connected and understands how to tell the story. But that fracturing has also led to, when you go to promote an event and you say, okay, how am I going to reach people here? I can't just do broadcast. I need to have a social media presence.
Right.
And it goes back to, full circle. I need to find the restaurants who can speak to their audiences directly.
Yeah.
And they've built that up because they say, all right, I'm gonna spend the time and spend the money, and I'm gonna have a social media manager. I'm going to hire Eat Local and have them do this for me. So that's just another piece of the marketing.
I try to talk to more and more people are getting becoming aware, like business owners I talk to. There's some great business owners and restaurant owners that do a phenomenal job with their marketing efforts here in Syracuse, but there's still so many. By and large, the whole area is so far behind the times when it comes to it. My job at Gearhart's, where I'm the marketing manager, we're producing consistent cooking videos, and granted, we're really fortunate that we have the gear and we have this great test kitchen where we can do whatever we want, and it's a restaurant supply and equipment place, so we better have all that.
Right.
But no one in Syracuse has put out consistent. Matt Reed's been doing some stuff with his Spatchcock Funk, but nobody before Matt was really putting out consistent like cooking videos,
right?
Which just seems crazy to me.
I keep going back to I came back I was in New York for 3 years.
Right.
We were long distance for 7. So I got a New York experience of being there all the time and then living there. And then I came back to town with Twitter, and I was following basically food trucks. It was my way of figuring out where is Gorilla Cheese? Where is, how am I going to find whoever's in my, so I was working in Midtown, and it was constant. And so, okay, you have a market, you have people, they're hungry, they want to be able to get the food. And so you basically are chasing around these trucks trying to find I really wanted to have schnitzel and go. If I don't get schnitzel today, I've got to figure out I'd be like, well, I can't do the meeting then because schnitzel's going to be there from 12 to 2. But Twitter was a way to follow these people. Yeah. And it was also a way to keep up with there were food blogs that were just dedicated to Midtown lunches. And you could ask them a question. I'm like, Carnegie John, my favorite guy on the corner by Carnegie Hall, he had the best char grilled burger, and he had just fantastic street food. Yeah. But I would follow them all by Twitter. Yeah. And when I first came back, and this was, years ago, I was trying to find people, and I'm like, wait, nobody's saying where they are. Nobody, it's because there weren't as many food trucks. Yeah. There wasn't sort of a consistent schedule of it didn't have that same following. Right. So I'm like, I guess Twitter doesn't really work here. Yeah. And I was working with clients because I came back and was working with an agency. And I'm like, I feel like Syracuse Twitter at that point wasn't really happening. Yeah. It just kind of yes, in New York, it was active and in you. And then it was just kind of we put a post on Facebook, and then the Twitter feed was, look at our post on Facebook. And I'm like,
I just had I don't know if I agree with you. We have a Twitter account for Eat Local. I've never had a client. A lot of clients are like, should we be on Twitter? I'm like, no, don't pay me to run your Twitter account. It's not going to work. I don't know of a scene. I don't know if there is a sub scene in Syracuse of Twitter that works. That's really dedicated to Twitter. I follow some of the reporters on there. Def Jeff is one of them, especially during an SU basketball game. He's on there tweeting, everything that, Boeheim's saying and that kind of stuff. And
that's sports are, they're a piece that brings us all together in terms of the media. So I could follow, being able to watch a game with others, to see Brent Axe's feed, to see, Def Jeff doing I say Jeff Herbert as he is now. Yeah. So in the radio
did he change?
He did.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought he still went by Def Jeff.
I think he goes as Jeff Herbert.
Ah, okay.
But he was, this was also, this was a time of me working with Hot 107.9. Right. And it was, the morning show was Marty, the one-man party. Yeah. Just Marty now on 95X. And Shannon and Def Jeff, who is now Jeff Herbert. Right. So everybody... And I was doing commercials for the country club. So, it's everybody we've all grown in a way. So it's, things are not what they were. Right. We've all We've all changed. We've
Yeah,
evolved.
for sure. We have, yeah.
Yes.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, Twitter just, I mean, and even other, social media. I just had a restaurant owner send a DM to like all of the accounts that I manage on Instagram, but it was just a full URL copy from a Facebook thing. So this person literally just like copied their URL and then sent it. And so I clicked on it thinking like, well, maybe this is like a specific post or maybe this is like a specific event. And when I clicked on it, it was just their Facebook page for the restaurant. And so I messaged and I was like, hey, I got this. And I don't know if it was supposed to be any words with it or if you sent it accidentally.
Is it doing something?
Right. And they said, no, I just wanted to get the word out about our Facebook page. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I immediately followed it up with, we do free pictures for restaurants if you ever want to have us come in for you. And so, yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's still other platforms that people just, don't get. Listen, when I first started doing the social for, because we had Keystone Media was like the first company before Eat Local.
Okay.
And then we just merged it all. But before Eat Local, Keystone Media was just doing social media for restaurants. And when I first started doing that, people weren't even familiar people weren't posting pictures of their food. The good ones that were doing a good job with their social in the area were posting really bad pictures of their food, like blurry and, the flash was on it and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, when I first started, it was like people were still just typing out, today's special is a delicious fried haddock sandwich with, French fries.
The tools that, I mean, again, everything takes time, everything takes effort, but it's the nuances. You're a restaurant. You don't just, the pieces that go into it. I loved, it was a radio client that worked, we used to work with BC Restaurant.
Yeah.
I remember Bill Collins. It was a wonderful restaurant. It did great food, and he used radio to kind of paint a picture of what he was doing. But everything with him he was very particular about every script, about the word choice. And I appreciate that. I mean, it was like we would have to go head to head on things sometimes, but it was every word in here matters. It was the same way. He put the same attention into what he was doing on the plate as, you're selling my food. You're selling my brand. I care about what this says and the choice and the nuance. And it's like, yeah, and that's that way. It's a lot sometimes to ask a restaurant owner to write the copy, or take the picture or do the piece if they're not familiar with it or they're not good. So they come to you or they come to an agency and they can have them help them build this.
Yeah.
But once you start to see it, it's like, I think the nuance matters. I mean, yes, I'm a font snob. If you use Comic Sans, I'm not eating your food. But like, all of these choices matter.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. See, I struggle with that in my, now at Gearhars, because it is, it's such it's a business that has really been they've never had anybody doing marketing, but it's been way out of the times in any of the marketing that they did. I mean, they bought Central Restaurant Supply 3 years ago, and we still have like 6 phone calls a day asking for Central Restaurant Supply. So like, that's how poor the marketing has been. But like, even with the podcast, I'm kind of like, listen, I'm not going to edit this. I'll edit this a little bit, but it's really just going to go out there. And like, I look at even, this flyer, and it's very well done. And I struggle with this stuff the most as a marketing person, because I'm just like, okay, information, who, what, when, where, why is on there, and the logo's on there, and boom, it's done. And then now going through like 10 different edits of, well, let's see what it looks like if we put that color there, or if we change that font, or that's something as being in marketing I struggle with.
I think it can be a struggle, especially as the idea is in process. So I started this process with, so I had the conversation with Laura Surway. We talked to our sponsors. We talked to restaurants that might be involved. And I started off with basically building this entire deck and saying, okay, I'm going to write out the idea.
Yeah.
So from a consumer standpoint, what is their experience? And if you kind of think through from step one, when they hear about it, to step two, what are they doing with it? It's the who, what, when, where, why.
Yeah.
And you write it all out and you say, okay, this is the full experience. What do they need? And I was like, okay, they need to know where to go. So my colleague, and we're not a large department, Sierra Schaefer, is fantastic. I don't even want to say her name because somebody's going to try and steal her.
Yeah.
However, she, to build a landing page on a MailChimp platform that we already subscribe to for free.
That's great. Yeah.
And just be able to showcase all the logos and then being able to, this is, again, giving away all the tricks here, but this is all Canva.
Yeah.
I mean, this is...
Yeah, I love Canva.
You're loading them all in and then sharing the files between the two of us. We're going back and forth.
Right.
We share the same folders. All the logos were already in.
Yeah.
It's the organization of it and then saying, what is the most important thing for the people?
This is great for Canva.
That's, at the end of the day, this, the card that's here was think through the experience and say, and for the radio listeners, I'm holding the $1,000 CNY dining package card. Which is telling people that if you take a picture of it, use the hashtag Instagram or Facebook, and you like us, you'll be entered to win the package.
Yeah.
That's one side of the card. The other side, it says this meal made a difference. I wanted people to know when they did purchase that item or they went on that day, this is a reinforcement of, it's reinforcing the restaurant was doing something good for the community and was helping support United Way.
Yeah.
So it was just one more piece that I said, okay, this is not a heavy lift. Someone said, well, we could, have a thing where we have receipts and somebody enter the receipts, and then I go, too heavy.
Yeah.
Too much. I've worked in restaurants. Granted, I work more in bars than I did, serving, but my wife was a waitress for, a number of places around town. And I was like, do we want one more thing that the wait staff has to try and figure out?
Right.
During all of this?
Yeah.
Like they're trying to figure out, is the food there? Is it in the bag? Did I put in the utensils? Did I, staple this on here? Did I do this? I was like, no, it's a card. It's just put that in and make it easy.
Right. Because
trying to make everything work right now is just too much work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's all clean. It looks great. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, now that we've spent most of the time talking about marketing,
it's going to go where it goes. So
yeah, I know. I had a great conversation. Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Great.
But I'm not done. I want to talk for people that are listening or watching that don't know who the United Way is or what you do. Tell us about that.
Well, so how much time do we have? Is the clock roll?
I mean, there's 87 programs according to the website.
I hope the website is up to date.
Yeah.
Yes. So 87 programs. So if you think through, it's a big, trying to summarize what the United Way does is like, I try to bring it down something smaller. I go back to being the marketing side. It's about you and the community saying, I want to donate. For me, I'm going to go with personal experience. I think of when I was in the conference room at Clear Channel, just starting out, my paycheck was not big, and we all got together and they said, it's United Way. This is our campaign. We're asking anybody to make a donation, and the cards are in front of you, and they say, check off here and donate $1 out of your paycheck, and you're like, I mean, it's $1. I don't know if I'm, that's $52 in a year. I might have gone somewhere else with that, and you don't understand why that dollar would matter. It's not until I always think back of like, if I had known a little bit more when I was younger, I would have said $1, I should give $5.
Yeah.
That if we are all as a community, you and me, we're both supporting local and are always, locally geared.
Yeah.
If we as a community, we all say, yes, I'll just give $1 or I'll give $2. The effect that could have on the community, because we'd be all putting this money together into this cause, is that an organization like United Way can amplify that for all of the other organizations it's working with.
Okay.
So it's the support we provide for funding for the food bank or for the Salvation Army or for Vera House or for Access CNY or for any of these programs. And this is going from, basic needs like a food pantry to education, to health, to workforce development, to all of these other programs. It's not, United Way is not the one that's going out. We're working on collaborations. We have 211, which is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week helpline, basically health and human services. You call 211 on your phone, and you ask them a question, and I'd be surprised if they don't have somewhere to find you help.
Yeah.
There are so many different ways to get support and get help in the community. United Way is this easy way for you to say, I want to support my community.
That's cool.
It's, we put this brand message together as local giving, local impact.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a worldwide brand, but it's all here. It's we are a local nonprofit.
Yeah.
Decisions are made by a local board. It's driven locally in terms of the staff that's here, and we're identifying where the greatest needs are and putting in programs that are going to help to serve those.
Yeah. I know, like, it's United Way of Central New York for this chapter, so to speak. Is there a United Way of, like, New York State as a whole? Is it just separated into, like, individual areas, territories?
It's really locally focused.
Yeah.
So you get some power from being able to communicate with other areas. So there's communication between, United Way of Rochester, United Way of Buffalo, United Way Albany. Like, they all have different names.
Yeah.
But, I mean, basically everyone under the United Way brand, we're all working together. We can all share services. We can all communicate. It's the power of being able to say, I can ask them, who did the website? How did you make this program work? How did you build this piece? Like, what is the element? Could I give you something that we've done here that you could replicate in Buffalo?
Right.
Is there something I can offer? And that's really the thing, is it's not competition.
Yeah.
It's collaboration of, we can do things to make things work better.
That's cool.
And that might just be, it might be a system of just figuring out, like, how to identify needs, or it might be doing a study and figuring out across the state, like the state of, what it means to be living above poverty line, but still not being in a safe area.
Yeah.
If you want to do some reading, go onto the website and look for, or Google something about Alice. It's more than I'll go into here, but it's basically the idea of, you are asset limited, income constrained, that you might be above the poverty line, but you're one incident away from having to be in a very emergency situation.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's a large part of Central New York is, we might be working in, especially with COVID, situations can pop up for people, and very immediately, very quickly, it can change. And that's, we need to have support systems that are here in this community, and that's what we're trying to support.
Yeah, that's cool. Every year for the Eat Local, the first year we chose for the card, we donate 20% of all of the sales to a charity. And so in the first year that we did it, we donated to In My Father's Kitchen. Yep. Last year we donated to Helping Hounds. And so this year we're going to be sending that donation to the United Way of Central New York. So the card launches October 1st, and it's the card that's good for 2021, and 20% of every sale, which the card's $25, of every sale we're going to be donating to the United Way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. I think I said before I came in, I don't think it's going to be a gotcha interview.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
you got me. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't tell you that everyone at United Way appreciates that.
Yeah. It's, we really care, it's funny. There was a gentleman who I was walking past, the Delavan Center, like, you don't really connect with everybody. It's such a huge space here. And so this one guy, and we don't have any curtains. And so people are always like, they see the microphone set up and they're like, what are you doing there? And so I tell them about the podcast. And this one guy this past week, he was like, so you have a podcast? He's like, how do you make money? And I was telling him about the business. And I was like, but we don't. Nobody pulls a salary or anything like that. I get that question a lot when we're out selling the car. They're like, so you're a nonprofit? I was like, well, we don't profit anything, but no, we're not an official nonprofit. But that's really the point of the business, is to obviously drive support for now locally owned restaurants in the state, and to be able to get them more business. And, I've told the story plenty of times before on the podcast, but one of the things that really hammered it home for me when we first started was a friend of mine who worked for a different marketing company, and it was called, I think, Loop Loyalty. And Peter, great guy out of Rochester, he was talking to a restaurant owner and, getting her to sign up for his thing. And after the meeting, he called me and he was like, "Hey, I need you to go down here and talk to this person because her restaurant's struggling. She could really use some help in the marketing world and, just trying to get more customers." So I went down there and met with her. And I was like, "Well, tell me, how long have you been in business and why'd you start the restaurant and yada, yada, yada." And she hadn't even been open a year. And I think she used to be like something in finance. And she said, "I started the restaurant because my friends and my family told me I made the best X, right? I had the most delicious cheeseburger, or nobody has ever had lasagna the way I make it." And so they kept telling me I should open a restaurant. And so I decided to quit my job and mortgage my house and do all this stuff to be able to open this restaurant. And now I can't get customers. Like, she had a horrible location, great food, but terrible location, terrible brand, not doing social well. And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, here, let me show you how to run a Facebook ad. You spend $50 and run a Facebook ad." And she was like, "I just spent all of my last $500 for marketing on this magazine, like Clipper magazine ad." And I was like, "Has it run yet?" She was like, "Yeah, it's been out for like a month and I haven't gotten anything back from it." And so I was like, "Okay, well, we're going to show you how to do this, and it's not going to cost you anything." And so that's why we do for restaurants. Give them free marketing advice. The food photography is free. The promo videos are free. We do all that kind of stuff for free, and that's really where the money from the card goes to. It is to buy this stuff, the cameras and the gear, so we can put out something that's hopefully produced well, but most importantly, that helps people in the community, restaurant owner, or charities, or whatever.
I don't, and you're doing important work. I don't know if anybody's telling you that, but this is important.
My mom does. Thank you.
Your mom is right, and my mom tells me she thinks I do good stuff. Too. So our moms are great. But it is, I don't. Your friends come to town and you don't take them out and show them Applebee's.
Right.
Nothing against Applebee's.
Yeah.
But our friends come in from New York and we say, we had a couple come in last year. They went to the fair. They ate everything there, and they still said, "Now we're going to Possibilities." And you're like, "Good luck." And they were both bodybuilders, so it worked out. And they ate pastas. And then the next day it was, "Let's go. Where are we going for breakfast?" It was like Rise and Shine.
Yeah.
And they Rise and Shine portions are like, it was exactly what they were looking for. And I also, Rise and Shine has been a fantastic supporter.
Yeah.
The whole thing is, we want a community, just like United Way wants to make sure that this is a community that we support and we help to grow and we help to build and we have the services we need. You're doing something to make sure that we have the storefronts filled. It's very easy to see a time when, again, let's date myself here, about 20 years ago, downtown Syracuse did not look like downtown Syracuse.
Right.
And I don't want to go back there. I don't want to see storefronts empty. Downtown committee, city of Syracuse, everyone has done so much to build this up. But I know what it used to look like. Like, I know what it could have, what it was, and now what it's become. And I know that bringing my wife back, she came back and saw Syracuse, and it was after being in New York, and after, it was when we got married, she was on the plane. We're coming home from Barcelona from our honeymoon, and she's like, "I think I wish I was going back to Syracuse." I'm like, "Are you sure?" I loved it, but she was living New York and was loving that.
Yeah.
But she was like, "I feel like things have changed since when I was a kid." And I'm like, "It has."
Yeah.
Like, this has gone in this direction. But there's nothing permanent about this.
Right.
It's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
And if you're not out there doing something to sell this to the community, if we're not, as a community, supporting the local businesses, it's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
We can't say this is going on forever.
Right.
It's on us.
Yeah.
Our job is to go out and eat every day, somewhere local, or every other day, or once a week.
Right.
But make sure we're doing something to support. So, thank you. And obviously, thank you for the donation for, to offer to support United Way. But I hope that you keep out there with this mission of, telling the stories and doing the things locally, because we need this.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, Ray, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell people just real quick where they can go online, Facebook, or how they can get more information.
You can go on Facebook and find United Way of Central New York, or on Instagram. I'm not going to give the handles because I'm sure you're going to find them. The contest is going on, so depending on when you're hearing this, it is going on through the end of Kickoff Cook Off, which does end on September 8th.
Cool.
But they can learn basically everything at eatunitedcny.com/2020.
Awesome.
And again, if there's any questions, I encourage you, if you have a question about United Way, reach out to me. Information's on the website. Everything is available.
Yeah.
We are ready to help answer questions. Just happy for your support and happy for the community to know about this.
Awesome. And we'll have the links in the show notes for everybody, or YouTube, wherever you're listening or watching.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again, man. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.